I'm Natalie Habersham. I'm 41 years old. I was born September 1st, 1982 in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Parents is Marion Wiley Jr.
I am Marion Wiley, Natalie's father.
And I am Doreen Wiley, Natalie's stepmother.
He was married to my mother, Gudrun Lehman, at the time. They were married for 13 years. My mother is from Germany. My dad was in the Air Force when they met. They had my two older sisters while they were there. When she conceived me, they moved into the United States because my dad had an accident. So they moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, had me, moved around a little bit. We lived in a suburban area. Everybody knew everybody. I could say when I was growing up, really didn't have to clean. My mom did all that cleaning. See, we had vacation times with my dad. He would take us fishing. And then my mother, she liked to sunbathe, so me, my sisters, and her would go to the beach.
Natalie, here comes your video. When I still was working, every night I came home, and every weekend we went almost to the beach. We got down there about 7, 8 o'clock, and we had to get breakfast. I asked if you all wanted to eat inside or outside, and it was a yes for the outside. Okay, so we walked up to the beach, got to our house and everything ready. We started to eat, and then all the seagulls came. And what did we do? Well, we ran back in where we got the food from. So, and then we ate it inside. That was a fun memory for me.
I used to go fishing quite a bit, and every time I go, all three of them would think, "Can I go? Can I go?" And then finally one day I set up everything, so everybody had a fishing pole, so I took all three of the girls, Natalie, Cassandra, and Miriam. But Natalie was the one that really wanted to go. She wanted to go. And so we went, and we got out to the fishing place. We started fishing, and of course I had to put the bait on the hooks for them, and teach them how to throw. They learned pretty quick, and surprisingly they started catching some fish. When we finished, we started back up the trail. When you catch the fish, you put them on a line. We had about 4 or 5, maybe 6 fish, and I pulled them out of the water, and everybody wanted to carry them, so they took turns. Then it got to Natalie's turn. The fish were still just not flapping around at all, and all of a sudden I gave it to Natalie, and they started flapping around. She started screaming.
After a while, probably would say when I was 9, my parents got divorced. Hold on, yeah. 9 years old, my parents got divorced. I just remember coming from school, and sat us down. They were all in the kitchen, and they announced that my mom was leaving us. At that time, at 9, you don't really understand divorce. So I think that was probably the first time I ever heard or seen my parents argue, because we never had that. It was always about the neighborhood and community and them working and raising us.
Went through a pretty hard time when we all went through the divorce with her mother, and Natalie kind of got really quiet, tried to help her in any way.
Time moves on. So in elementary school, I kind of had a hard time with the separation of my mom not being in the household. So my older sisters kind of took on that motherly role. Had to do my hair, had to make sure I was ready for school. Stayed a lot at my grandmother's house since my dad was a single parent then. Every morning, go to my grandmother's house because the elementary school was right behind her house. My dad would go to work. I wait for school to start. I walk to school. Same routine. As we got older, my dad ended up remarrying. Not that long after divorce, but he ended up remarrying. So his second wife was that was a trying moment for all of us, I believe. It started out very well. Then my dad started traveling for work as being an aircraft mechanic. He traveled different states, different countries, wherever they needed him. Yeah, so having a stepmom was pretty rough. After a couple years, they were married for, I believe, 8 years. And in that 8 years, we not only had to deal with a divorce, but now a new person being in the house, acting as a mother. So as my dad was away, we had some times where it was a little rough, physically, emotionally. Then it came to a point where he had to decide, whether or not he was going to stay with this woman or to protect his children. So he got his divorce from her. In that time where they were married, I dealt with some mental health issues. It wasn't long. I kind of masked it for a long time because I didn't want people to think that something was wrong with me. So I did it privately. I used to cut, I wouldn't say cut. I used to grow nails long enough to where I can scratch myself to where it would bleed. So it wasn't like, if somebody seen it, they would think that you just scraped your arm or whatever. But that was my way of dealing with the sadness and then with anger. I listened to a lot of heavy metal at that time. At that time, of course, if people know heavy metal, it says a lot of angerish things, dark things. At that point in my life, that's just where I was as a child. My dad found out. My sister had told my father because she caught me with scissors against my wrist. So I had to go to counseling. And then he made me go to counseling with the person that was causing the emotional stir-up. So that really didn't work out well. Like I said, after a while, they got divorced. We had a little breakage. My dad was still traveling for work, so my sisters, had to take care of us. Did yard work. We made sure the grass was cut. My dad really didn't have to do much, but maybe cook. Then my sisters, they graduated high school. My older sister went to college, so it really was just me and my dad at the time. During that time, I guess graduation time, he was already seeing another woman. This time wasn't too quick as moving in the house, but he kept it privately until he knew he was ready to settle down with that person. So I remember just having a lot of freedom, probably my 12th grade year. Probably wasn't that good for me, but me and my sister was always home, had a lot of freedom.
Hello. I am Cassandra. I am Natalie's older sister. And the first thing I do want to say to everyone is that I am very, very proud of Natalie and Dante. From where they came from to where they are today, just so very proud of all their accomplishments. But I am actually here to talk about Natalie. Our parents were divorced, and it was very hard on us, me, Miriam, and Natalie. Our dad got married for the second time, and that was a big struggle for the two of us. I practically raised Natalie through that marriage, and she has overcome many things.
My dad was working, trying to date, He'd be gone, especially the weekends. That was our time to turn up. So me and my sister, either I would go out and drink with my friends and she'd be home, or we'd end up bringing company to the house. I did a lot of things probably a teenager shouldn't do. Even if my dad was home, at that point, I got into alcohol my senior year just to deal with emotions I had stuck inside. So I would pretend I'm here at a girlfriend's house and really be out here partying with the guys. I was a tomboy then, so I really didn't hang with a lot of females. It was just a circle of guys I hung out with. Graduation comes. I always told my dad I wanted to cook. So 2 weeks after graduation, I went to culinary school. I actually went for pastry arts. And then during that time, I met a gentleman. Found out I was pregnant probably 2 months after I started. So I really didn't get to turn up too much for, college life. So I had to deal with trying to get through school, being sick. And then the big thing is calling my dad to let him know I was pregnant. That was probably one of the hardest things that I had to do because I didn't want to have disappointment. But it actually went well. He wasn't mad or upset. He just said, hey, either you stay with him or you don't. just know you have us here to help you take care of the child when you're done with school. So that soothed me. I got through culinary school. Well, during culinary school, of course, it's just like college. The gentleman that I was seeing, that I was pregnant by, ended up cheating. So I kind of just drifted off from him. I was like, hey, I'm just gonna go do me, have my child, got my sisters, my dad. You don't really have to do much. Just go about your business. I go about mine. So I done with culinary school. I go home. He had about 2 or 3 months left from school. I told him, do you until you figure out what you want to do. I ended up having my child July 2nd, 2001. I was 18 then.
My name is Zaki Muhammad, and I am the oldest. One thing about my mother is she's the hardest worker you will ever meet, and she's one of those who, just by her presence, it makes you want to be better.
So I moved back home, was in my dad's house. A week after my child, I had to deal with the loss of an uncle. Sorry. All right. So, dealing with the loss of your favorite uncle, Uncle Calvin. He was the best. Fun uncle, always had to babysit us when we were younger. But yeah, so we got through that. And then I ended up moving out. The young guy ended up moving down, wanted to raise our child together. Got my first job as a banquet chef, was making good money. Ended up having my second child.
Hi, I'm Kiara Muhammad, and I'm the third oldest. One thing about my parents is that they always pushed me and every last one of my siblings to work hard so we can be the best versions of ourselves.
So 2004, child number 2, still living in the same place. Both had good jobs working for hotels, restaurants. We were together probably 6 years. And then, you know, he was involved in wanting to make fast money. I remember him getting shot at, somebody tried to rob him. At that point in my mind, I was just like, hey, you can either leave the street life alone or, you know, we can work this out. But we ended up separating. And when we separated, I moved in with my mother. And then that time, we still stayed close by, just so it was easier for the kids to transport back and forth. We co-parented. I feel very well. Got pregnant for a third time. That one, we kind of, I don't know how to explain that. So the third one was a one night stand. Not that proud of it, but it was only one night because the gentleman ended up having a girlfriend. So I'm not a homewrecker, so left him alone, still had my child.
Hello, my name is Asa Wiley. One thing my mom has taught me is to never give up. You know, that helped me throughout my high school year because I was on the verge of either quitting or just letting go. So that helped me. You know, I pulled through and graduating this year, 2024. So yeah, I thank her for that. I'm proud of her. I love her.
That was July 6, 2006. So I was 4 months pregnant with him. My daughter and I was in the hospital. She was sick. And I remember watching the news, and it was my son's father. And he was murdered. So it was still kind of hard. Not that I was, you know, really involved with him, but it was the fact of having a child knowing that he wouldn't have a father to grow up with. So got through that. After that, worked hard, take care of my kids, co-parenting. I believe after I had my son, kind of went into postpartum depression. I was living in the projects, didn't really have much help. Things just got rough for me. So I remember living in the projects, 3 kids, couldn't really work because didn't have daycare money. So pretty much lived off the government probably about a year. During that time, I went through a part of depression, involved a lot of alcohol. When I felt where I felt like I was gonna hit rock bottom, kind of made phone calls. It was almost like I made sure my kids didn't have to see me where I was at, mentally and emotionally. So I called my oldest kid's dad, his family. They went away for the summer, just so I can get a little break, get myself together. I almost want to say I really didn't need that break because it sent me into a dark place. Drinking, seeing someone at the time. So I remember that one night, he had came to see me. We go out. Like I said, a lot of alcohol involved. Just trying to drink problems away, emotions away. I remember that one night we got into an argument. It did not end well. I probably drank until I passed out for a moment. I actually fell face down. So he had to pick me up, took a cab home. As I came to, that was probably one of the nights that, I don't know, I just didn't want to be here anymore. Kept asking for my sister. You know, I was just over and beyond, in a dark place. So in our arguments, I remember calling my sister over. Her and her husband came. It was a little rough and scuffle because I don't know what was said, but something triggered me in that moment where I just snapped. So my sister had to call the cops on me. At that time, I smoked cigarettes, so I was like, everybody just leave me alone. In the projects, if you could picture the projects and seeing yourself sitting on the roof, you would not think that you're about to harm yourself because it's like a hop skip, just a jump down. So I went and sat on the roof, smoking a cigarette, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to bed after this. Y'all don't have to worry about me. By that time, she had already called the police. So one cop comes, I'm just telling him I'm okay. And you see more cops. It was just like a swarm of them. And now I'm getting nervous because I'm like, okay, let me just take my little self to bed. So after I was done with my cigarette, I go to put my foot in the window, and it was over from there. It's about maybe 6, 7 cops pulled me in, threw me to the ground. It was just rough. And from there, I remember me leaving. I was scared. I was under the influence. I was angry. Every emotion you could think of, I was probably going through. I remember looking at my sister, and I threatened her life. In that moment, I hated everybody. So, threatened her life. That was the first time I was in shackles, handcuffs, back of a little paddy wagon. I went to the hospital, and she signed me into a mental health facility. At that point, I had to make arrangements for my kids. I called their father, let him know. Wow. Yeah, so after that night, it was long. They drove me. I can't remember the name of the place. So I'm there to get help. I at least had to stay there for 72 hours before I could actually sign myself out. When they sign you in and have to register you, they take your alcohol level, and mine was like 2.06. Like I really should have been on the ground dead somewhere at that point with that much alcohol in me. I don't know how long I was there. I had to go through a program. At that point, now I mentally think like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna get my kids. My son, like I said, he was an infant when I didn't give him up. I signed temporary custody over to a family member. Yeah, so after that, I ended up going home. I finished the little program, came back home, I moved, still didn't have my kids, but ended up seeing a guy, moved to Lancaster, At that point, I was still kind of there, but not there, if that makes any sense. I had a rough patch, and probably a year later, still was dealing with depression, anxiety. I had another breakdown, being suicidal. Setting letters up, writing notes to my sisters, telling them what I need them to do. The devil really just had me in a dark place, like mentally. It just felt like I never ever had any help. I went through that stage, moved to Lancaster, started working, thought I was doing better. Working, sending money to my kids, making sure they had what they needed, trying to get myself together. Ended up being homeless. Probably lived in a tent for probably about 9 months. Nobody know nothing. I call home, talk to my sisters, just play like everything is fine. Just being in a relationship, getting comfortable, just being able to work, being homeless. I just went through a whole lot in that time of my life, in those 8 months. Finally got sick and tired of my situation. I went to church, just because I know that's what I was brought up in. So I said, Lord, if you could please just get me out of this. I just want to be right. So the young man I was with, he ended up getting arrested. That was about my way out. Called on someone. They took me back to Harrisburg. And I called my dad and I was like, Daddy, I need something. He was already in Georgia, Brunswick, Georgia at that. So 2006, I went and stayed with him in Georgia. So I moved me and my kids to Brunswick, Georgia. Still 3 kids. Had 1 little room in his house, trying to get myself together. I was going good, going to church, getting what I needed at that time. Being with your parents, being with your dad and a parent that's not yours, a step parent, was kind of rough. So not even a month being down there, we get into a little disagreement. I said, well, Daddy, I'm just going to let your household be peaceful. I'm going to go back home. I'll save up money and I'll come down when I can have my own place. Okay, let's fast forward. Went back home, just worked, got my kids. So I'm saving up, sending money to my dad. So 2010, I moved back down to Brunswick, Georgia in my own place. And I just remember being in a grocery store with my stepmother, and she picks up the phone.